Vamos a empezar una nueva charla que ahora se trata del socialismo del siglo XXI. Un tema bastante polémico, como ustedes saben.
We are going to begin a new talk, Socialism of the 21st Century, a fairly controversial subject, as you know. Some people don't like this term. They ask, why socialism of the 21st century? Why not just socialism? Why do you talk about socialism if this word has such a negative connotation after the collapse of the socialism in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union? In fact, after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Eastern countries and the Soviet Union, the left was perplexed and for a long time knew more about what he didn't want from socialism than what he wants.
Y no lo que quería. ¿Y qué era lo que no quería?
What was it that the left reject? It rejected state socialism, where the state defined everything and no one was consulted. It rejects also a state capitalism, that is, simply expropriating factories belonging to capitalists and handing ownership over the state. It rejects a totalitarian state, that is, a state that takes over everything, that defines values, even science. What was science, what wasn't science, all was defined by the state. It rejects bureaucratic centralized planning, a state that plans everything, even the kind of jacket that the people will wear. The shops were full of jackets and nobody bought them because no one was consulted if they wanted that color of jacket. Also rejected was the idea of socialism as collectivism, where the individual didn't count. Everyone was equal, and if possible, all in uniform. The extreme case was China. Of course, it was a time of war. All the Chinese dressed alike.
Eso era rechazado.
Another mistake made by this kind of socialism was something that we call in Spanish productivismo. In other words, the idea of placing great emphasis on economic development and producing more products, more goods, without being concerned about its effects upon nature. The ecological question is not only a result of capitalism. The socialist countries did not care much about the nature either. Neither did people want a dogmatic kind of socialism. The dogmatism of socialism that thought it owns the truth, owns the theory of the history, and where everybody has to accept a kind of doctrine. Neither did people consider that atheism was one of socialist good points. Rather, it was considered a defect. In the past, socialism was associated by Marxists with atheism. But later, Marxists who were much more open, much more profound, among them Fidel Castro, thought it was not necessary to be atheist to be a socialist. On the contrary, they felt that the Christian has a very important role to play in building the new society. And finally, a real controversial subject that we can go into more later, that of the single party. Also was rejected the idea that socialism should have only one party. Here, we will not examine each of these points. We will be looking at them as we discuss the future of the new socialism.
El nuevo socialismo, ¿no? Pero yo le quería decir entonces, bueno, ¿por qué hablar de socialismo hoy, ¿no? En el siglo XXI? ¿Por qué hablar de...
After all what I have said, why talk about socialism today in the 21st century? Why? If there were so negative connotation in relation of the term socialism, are we talking about that today? It was President Hugo Chavez who reintroduced the term socialism. He began to re-evaluate this word, but he gave it a different content. And today, the world crisis of capitalism puts socialism on the agenda, because history has really shown that the neoliberal capitalist system is not the answer to the problems of the people in this world. So, when capitalism fails, a search began. Today, more and more people are becoming interested in Marx's writings, in the Marxist classics. It is worthwhile to know sales of books about the early socialist theoretician have increased. And with Chavez's initiative of relaunching of the question of socialism, progress is being made. Now, we not only know what we don't want, but also we know more of the new society we want to build. That is going to be one of the aims of our conversation over several sessions, because it's a fairly big subject to tackle. But we do not just have to ask ourselves why we should talk about socialism if the world has suffered so much rejections. We also have to ask ourselves why talk about socialism in Latin America if we have here some government which have inherited bourgeois state apparatus. We have economical conditions which are not specially advanced. Economic conditions are much more advanced in Europe, not in Latin America. So there are people who wonder, isn't this talking about socialism simple voluntarism on the part of our governments, only a desire to build a new society, or there is another way to resolve our problems?